You are watching Space, the show. I am Tom Masters, your host, and today on Space, we will be talking quite a bit about NASA and the epic week of anniversaries that just passed, came to a conclusion. A lot of stuff going on with SpaceX, and we'll be talking about the past, present, and future of all things space travel and power tech. What is power tech? I think you know what power tech is, but we'll be getting into it. All right, so first up, we had one of the most epic and amazing weeks of the Apollo space program's anniversaries. There were so many different anniversaries that we will be talking about them, and well, all of them actually. So I don't know, on the 16th, I actually went to see the movie about the Apollo program. It's called Fly Me to the Moon. If you haven't seen it, go see it. Really good show. So that was the day that we had the anniversary for the blast off of Apollo 11, which was the mission that we launched, or not we did not do this. They, at that time, a lot of people worked very hard to launch man to the moon and land on it. So about 3 days later, three and a half days later, the crew arrived in orbit around the moon, and then they landed on the moon. Well, it was the 21st, kind of. It was really it was the 20th. What happened was, in space, we use a time zone called UTC. That's Universal Space Time, right? So basically, in the United States, it was about 20 minutes till, no, excuse me, it wasn't. In space, it was about 20 minutes until midnight. And that's not true. That's why we're doing this show for a practice. So it was about 4 hours before midnight, and about 6 hours later, the guys, they stepped out onto the moon's surface, and that 6 hours brought us into the 21st. So basically, in UTC time, we landed on the moon on the 20th, and about 6 hours later, it had become the 21st. So the next day was the anniversary of man stepping onto the moon. Oh gosh, several hours later, after all of the big exploration was done, they go back up from the moon's surface to join the command module, and they launch back toward Earth. And then three and a half days later, they plop down into the ocean. So it was an 8-day mission that brought us several different kind of very victorious anniversary. So happy anniversary to everybody for the 55th year anniversary of the Apollo space program. It was very, very epic. If you want to see something else really, really epic, and you want to go in person to see some of these things that are happening, like right now is the time of Apollo 11. We're launching things into space. Actually, this is more like before Apollo, it's more like Mercury, because we're launching people, actually the Starship, into orbit of the Earth, but not yet going to the moon. So we're doing practice missions and getting perfect at getting into orbit again. Okay, but it's a worthy cause and a really exciting time. We have some more things that we're going to be laying on you. If you weren't here at the time, if you're not old enough to have been here at the time, I certainly wasn't here at the time when Apollo was launching into space in the 1960s. But this whole year is actually a huge anniversary year for the Apollo program, and we're going to be going into some of those things as well in the upcoming shows that we're having this week, and we hope that you really enjoy that trip. But also, if you want to really enjoy a trip, take yourself down to the new mecca of space travel, and that is Starbase at the very, very bottom tip of Texas, right where it joins Mexico, about a mile away from Mexico, really. You can go to SpaceX and see the rocket garden and see the rockets that are going to space. You can see the hangar bays there. They have high bay, mega bay, and the Starship factory where these Starships are actually built. So I encourage you to go down there. It's really epic. We went for a helicopter tour of SpaceX as well. I'll be talking a little bit about that this week as well. And so anyways, it's been a really great, last week was a really great week of anniversaries, but all this year we're going to be talking about some really tremendous milestones that were met in the space program, and some really epic things that you can do to go and visit and make yourself able to enjoy history in the making right now. We're going to be talking a little bit more about this picture too. This picture that you're seeing now is an epic pic of the vision that Elon Musk has for the future of space travel, taking us away from the Earth and to Mars. This is not the mission to the moon. This is the mission to Mars. This is something that Elon has envisioned, that we will take 2,000 ships or so, to Mars every time we go. That's the preliminary vision. And if you look at the scope of what Star Factory can build, they're saying that they want to build about 100 starships. And people are like, wow, that's a lot of starships. Really what he wants to do, he wants to build 1,000 starships per year in Boca Chica at Starbase at the Star Factory. And the reason for that number is because about every 2 years and 2 months, we get an opportunity, a little window where we can go to Mars. That's the window. And so it gives us about 2 years to build 2,000 starships. And he wants to launch a fresh Starfleet to Mars the first 2, 3, 4, 5 times, because when you get to Mars, there is nothing there. Well, actually, there's a lot of stuff there. We'll get into that. But there's nothing set up as far as production plants, manufacturing facilities, things like that. And so you can go and mine. If you can find things, then you can mine things. However, you don't have the big giant trucks there to mine things. You don't have the facilities and the plants to make the steel alloy and the things that you need in order to manufacture the Mars base. So what you need is a supply of steel, concrete, things like that. Now, we think that we've figured out the concrete part. We'll be getting into that. But the steel part, Elon plans to melt down the starships in order to build the structural things on the first habitable base and sustainable base on Mars. So we had a couple of blast off last week. This card is actually supposed to be a current card, but I have not updated it for this week as we are doing some run-throughs of this show. So last week, this was current, so I'll just treat it as if it's current. Coming up this Thursday, we have the SpaceX is launching the Falcon 9 for Starlink from Cape Canaveral. Friday, we have 2 launches, one from Vandenberg out in California and one from the Kennedy Space Center. All of those are Starlink. A lot of really great things going up there for Starlink. We'll get into a little bit about their mission as we travel along the meanderings of this show, but you'll always be able to get your blast off news from this show and from WAI. All right, so Power Tech. We did want to touch on Power Tech in our little sample show today. And Power Tech for today, I'm just going to tell you one of the most impressive. There's a lot of really impressive technologies in space. And one of the most impressive ones is solar power. And the solar power that we're looking at for Mars is totally different from the solar power needed for the Earth. Mars is dimmer than Earth, and so it needs about twice the pull or twice the power as we would have from the Earth. And so there's a couple of things that we will get into about the power tech aspect of how we get power in space and how the power works in space. It works a little different than here on Earth. So in the history of power tech is very important, kind of like the history of the Apollo program to today is very important. That was 55 years ago. But if you look at the solar technology in 1839, now the US was established in 1776. Okay, about 50, 60 years later, here you have the first observation of the photovoltaic effect, which is the ability for the light or the sun to make a reaction providing voltage, okay? In 1888, now look at that, that's 50 years later. Okay, what happens? You have the very first solar cell on a rooftop in New York. A gentleman created the very first solar cell. It wasn't a very efficient solar cell. That is not important. A lot of people say that a drop in the bucket is not very important. I take the different stance. I think a drop is huge, because without a drop, without the entire collection of drops, you have no full bucket. This first solar cell was so important 50 years later that we were able to, in 1954, see solar panels be capable of being produced and manufactured in an efficient manner so that they could be used on commercial products. So that in 1958, you saw the Vanguard 1 satellite powered by solar power. And that took a long time to get there, but need is the mother of all invention. So what you have is in 1978, the White House puts, now I know a lot of people are thinking, oh, man, we're getting solar on our house. People in like the 80s and 90s, they had solar on their house. Well, in 78, boom, White House, solar panels. leading the way. All right, so a huge, giant thing happened in 2004. And as we can all see, I need to adjust these cards because my picture is going to be over the next part of this little information. That's why I created those other cards so that everything could be off to the side and visible while we're here on screen. So in 2004, a really important discovery was made. That's right, graphene was discovered. Graphene, as defined as one atom tall. Graphene is one atom tall in a hexagonal mesh that goes over, it lays over a solar cell. This gives it much more durability, much more toughness to the solar cell. Also, it makes it much more efficient. Now, this discovery makes the solar cells on Mars capable of producing almost as much as the solar cells here on the Earth produce. And that's going to be very important because, again, when you go there, there's no manufacturing of steel. You have to take steel there and melt it down. When you go there, you have to have power. There's no big power plants, so you have to take the power plants with you. And those power plants, in large part, will be in the form of solar power. Today, right behind my picture, you can't see this, but you will in the next show be able to see this, that today we are using that solar power for the moon and Mars missions and all of the, well, not all of them, but probably all of them. I would like to say all of them, but we will find out. The solar power for the satellites that are in space, and what we'll do now. Oh, actually, Elon Musk has done the calculations and the math. He says that 100 square miles, 100 miles by 100 miles of solar cells could power the entire United States. Now, we're the most energy consumptive country in the planet, and just to be able to be powered by solar power, that is tremendous. Okay, so let's see. Let's see, I want to ask a question real quick to one of our producers here. Hey, Cove, are all of the satellites in space, are they all solar powered?
Most satellites in space are solar powered because solar panels provide a reliable and sustainable energy source in the vacuum of space. However, some satellites, especially older ones or those operating in areas with limited sunlight, may use batteries or nuclear power sources. Is there a specific type of satellite you're curious?
We will get into that in just a moment. So yeah, we're going to be getting a lot more into the power tech and these solar things. But next time on Space, the show, we will be doing, well, this week we will be doing a demonstration of light speed. Can you fathom how okay, they say, oh, it takes a certain amount of minutes for light to get from this celestial body to this celestial body. That doesn't mean much to us because we haven't had to travel from one body to the next, so we have no idea really what that means. But we will be able to demonstrate to you. You may have already seen this at some point, but there's a way to demonstrate to you light speed. Hope you're going to love that next time on Space, the show. So what I want to do now is ask Cove, hey Cove, what is between the Apollo Saturn rocket and the Mercury Atlas rocket?
One of the biggest differences between the Apollo Saturn rocket and the Mercury Atlas rocket is their size and payload capacity. The Saturn V rocket used for the Apollo missions was much larger and more powerful, capable of carrying heavier payloads and sending astronauts to the moon.
And from what I understand, one of them was used for, I think Mercury's Atlas was used for military purposes. Is that right? Oh. And we have lost the connection to Cove. However, we will be getting into more of that next time on Space, the show.